as you know, thanks for coming on again. Mayne's the GOAT. Trader Mayne, if anyone doesn't know, is one of the best people to follow on Twitter for all charting, trading, I think mindset as well. And really kind of understanding markets, understanding common sense, cycles, and everything else that's been a part of CT since when did you start? Like 2016, Mayne, or earlier?
Technically earlier, but I didn't have any idea what I was doing until 2016, 17. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I didn't know what I was doing until probably late 2017. And obviously, we all go through the lumps the first few cycles, but being a part of this community, I think, if especially in the beginning, it's a lonely business. Like kind of like Elliot's going to be on. He's a mindset optimization, high performance coach. He represents like a lot of poker players, me, myself, Olympic medalists, UFC champions, boxers, Hollywood actors, people of Wall Street, all those things, and traders. And to me, all those things have one thing in common. It's a lonely profession. It's a lonely profession where you never really know if you're optimizing for yourself or you're at your highest levels or peaks. And it's all about mindset and kind of feeling comfortable with the things you're doing, the trades you're doing. Obviously, man, you use whatever things you do for trading that you'll chart something or whatever else, and you can explain it better than I can. But a lot of the decisions you make might get emotional at some points. Am I wrong?
No, I mean 100%. It's not only lonely in that you're doing this by yourself, but it's lonely in that oftentimes you don't have people you could commiserate with, right? Like I can't talk to my normie friends, and I mean that in the nicest way, about what I do for a living because they have no idea. If I told them the amount of money that I lose on a trade or making a stupid decision, they're gonna look at me like I'm crazy. So it's so important to have people and a community and friends and people like Elliot to talk to, because it helps keep you sane and grounded. And, it makes some of these things that feel kind of
Impossible.
intangible and impossible, very real and tangible and tactile. So that's been, a huge benefit to me.
Yeah, and I think that the thing I like is like, although I could talk to my group chat or you or whoever else about like the situations I've been in crypto, because we've all felt the enormity of like losing seven figures or gaining seven figures on your chart or whatever else. But hearing it from someone like Elliot, that has done the work, studied, and is kind of outside of our world to give us the advice we need to like get these goals set in place or understand these situations we're in or fix them is kind of where I think he's been a great benefit to me. But Elliot, thanks for coming on. I kind of introduced you already, but I'm just explaining. I started Liquidated kind of as a way to give back a bit, but also like get some of the best influencers, traders, entrepreneurs, founders on to get their story, their origin story, and why they got into crypto, and kind of help some of the younger people that are going to come into this space, thrive, whether that be as an influencer or a trader or investor or otherwise. And I thought, hey, what a great way to do that, to bring in someone that really understands people that are in high intensity situations that are kind of in these lonely professions like we are as crypto traders. And kind of get an understanding from you. So, we introduced you, as a high performance coach. You're also kind of a therapist and a hypnotist. But yeah, thanks for coming on.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's one of the things you mentioned over and over again is this is lonely, and almost everything I work within is a lonely situation.
Yep.
And it's really sort of understanding how much support is needed. And when you work through those issues, how much better you can trade and how much more successful you can be.
Yeah. I mean, I've personally been working with Elliot since I want to say December. Does that sound right? I feel like I should know, but I think it was around December. So it's been several months now. And it's funny, like we were talking about this loneliness and, you can talk to your friends and things like that. But sometimes you need a neutral third party who knows what you do, like they get it, but they don't know you. Like they're not your parent, they're not your buddy who's also a trader. And they sometimes it's like a sounding board that will also like sound back to you, be like, hey, do you realize you're being crazy right now? Like what
Yeah.
you just said to me is insane.
Yeah.
What you're doing right now makes no sense. And then it's like something that you already know, but you almost have to say it out loud. You have to have someone objectively look back at you. It's like, okay, you're being delusional. And you're like, oh yeah, now that I've heard this back, yeah, I am being a little crazy. I can clean this up. And sometimes it's as simple as that. It's having that kind of outside third party person who gets it, and can help you look at yourself and the things that you're doing and see if there's leaks in your game and things that you can tighten up. And there always is, no matter how good you think you're doing, there's always something you can be doing better.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of the things you mentioned there. One is the importance of third party looking in. Your friends will all have some biases of some kind. And, it can be very hard to be truly honest with your friends because that's not always what people want. So, having someone who's a third party come in and give an honest assessment of what's happening, this is what it looks like from the outside. I'm not involved,
Mhm.
but this is what I can see. This is what I feel about this. And this is what I've seen with, over the years, thousands of people I've worked with. This is a trend. This is a pattern that you see in high performers. And another thing you mentioned there was this idea of there's always more work to do. With something like trading, typically it's those at the very top, the very peak, who are making all of the money. So as we look at, it's not that they're 50 times better, but they are making 50 times more money. And that's something that we have to be sort of very aware of, that it's these small changes, this fine tuning that creates those gaps between the traders who are doing okay and making a living and the guys out there who are making the absolutely enormous money. And it is this sort of fine tuning is the work that I do.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with a close friend of mine a couple of weeks ago. I said, "Well, how much money would you have if you never partied or did some drugs in your life?" And he said 100 million, and he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference. We can be a genius 99% of the time, but if we fuck up in a poker tournament on one hand, it's over.
Yeah.
And it's the same way a lot in life. It's like, a guy told me one time, you can put your hand in a monkey trap as many times as you want, but one of these days you're going to get caught, and once it's over.
Yeah.
And, I've been fortunate in my life that I haven't been caught yet, but, eventually if I keep playing that game, I'm going to lose.
Yeah. I think it's also super, it's part of what makes people who are in these types of industries, whether it's high levels of gambling, it's trading, our personality type lends itself to what we do, but it also lends itself to a lot of things that can be very detrimental to your life. I am obsessive with certain things. I have an addictive personality with certain things. I have the type of personality where I will hyper fixate on something and ignore everything else going on in my life except for that one thing. That has made me successful, but it's also been detrimental in some ways where I've let things that are equally important. And until I started working with Elliot, maybe didn't even realize that, I think by ignoring my health, my diet, all these other things in my life and just focusing on trading, I'm going to make more money. When in reality, if I was maybe taking care of myself, making sure I'm still doing all these things, I'm actually going to end up trading even better. So it's a very, these top 1% people and career paths and things like this, it lends itself to the positive, but it also can be very negative if you're not aware of these things.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's something that I see just as trends in high performance is it's not just all about the particular profession. So health is important, sleep is important, the relationships you have in your life and how you deal with other people, all of this builds a foundation for you to be able to have the highest level of success. As I'm working in all of these different industries, so as you said, I'm working in professional poker, professional gambling, lots of traders, Wall Street guys, crypto guys, CEOs of companies. It's a theme that nearly everyone who's successful is in good shape. Like it's unbelievable as I look at my client base, the sort of the importance that everyone seems to give to their health and their mindset and their sort of ability to be sort of fully performing in all areas of life. It's very rare that I see someone who absolutely obsesses on a subject, stays inside all day, and they don't self-sabotage themselves and crush their profits along the way.
Yeah, I have this thing that someone said a few years ago, like if the guy's out of shape and he's a slob, like he's probably a grifter. It's probably a guy you don't want to invest in. And that's been relatively true. Like most of the people that have ended up scamming me or whatever else, like are out of shape. And the most of the really successful people I know are in good shape.
Well, if you can't take care of your body, are you going to take care of my money?
Yeah.
Is usually a pretty easy barometer or litmus test for investing with anyone.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that as you say, there's some truth there because there's a self-worth piece. Is it worth investing in my health and my body and who I am as a person? And if someone's struggling with that and they don't want to go to the gym and they're eating very poorly and doing all the things, more likely than not, there's some kind of self-worth issue, which obviously creates dangers in terms of trust.
Yeah. And I'm really good at like self-reflecting and understanding what all my issues are. But one of the things that's been great with you, Elliot, is that you'll tell me how to fix them or we'll map out how to fix them. Whereas, it's great that I know what my problems are, but like how do I fix them is where you really want to get that from a third party, especially, most of the guys in my space, we all have the same problems, but we just don't know how to fix them,
Yeah, it's someone to hold you accountable too, right? I think part of the program I've had with Elliot is it wasn't just like, okay, you're doing these things. Oh, you could do this. It's like, okay, well, we're talking, and he's going to be like, hey, we talked about this last time. How's it going? And, sometimes you don't always have an answer. And, when you're an adult, right, like we all are, you don't have, and especially when you're in a career where you don't have a boss, right? Like you have to hold yourself accountable or work with someone that who can help you create structures in your life. For me, a big thing, it was like, okay, because success is like this nebulous term, there is no, okay, I always had this thing. It's like, I got to get to this number, like, then I'm good. And Elliot's like, that number doesn't exist. I know you think it does, but it's not real. You're going to get to that number. And then what's going to happen? What happens when you wanted 100 grand? You got there. Did you just stop? Of course not. Then I wanted 1 million. And then, and that is going to persist. So it's not about having this kind of metric of success as this pie in the sky number that, oh my God, I'm going to have this net worth and I'm happy. It's creating things that I could do every day, every week to say, okay, I had a great week. Even if who cares about the number? I did all the things I needed to do to know that this was a successful week and I'm working towards all my goals because there's many and they're moving like endlessly. I was so hyper focused on this, like just end number. And it's like, well, yeah, like it doesn't exist.
And I mean, it's one of the key things that we teach is like, there is no happy ever after. So many people believe there's a number that's going to make them happy. And oftentimes it's like 5 to 10 times the amount they have, whatever, at the time. So, you're just going to multiply it by 5 and say, hey, when I hit there, then I'm going to be happy ever after. I don't need to worry anymore. And the truth is that the happy ever after never doesn't really exist. It's all a journey. I think where a lot of guys, especially in these industries, get stuck is at some point more money makes you happier. So early on, your life dramatically changes between $10,000, $100,000, and $1 million. Like things genuinely are different. So you see this process, this pattern that's worked for you, that it's like, hey, when I get more money, life is better, I'm happier. With crypto, which is, a bizarre situation really in terms of the money that is available, is you might be now looking at, $10 million. And how different does $20 million make you feel? How different does $50 million make you feel? Or perhaps when I hit $100 million, I'll feel different. But the truth is life doesn't really change very much between 10 million and 100 million. You eat at the same restaurants, you go on the same vacations, you probably live in a pretty similar house, maybe not as big, but you can only live in so many rooms. So the pattern that used to work and used to make your life better doesn't really create substantial change anymore. The things that do create the substantial change, as you mentioned, are things like your health, your sleep, your relationships. Those things do actually impact the way you feel in the present moment and on a day-to-day basis.
Do you seem to think like a lot of successful people are just never happy? That's why they're successful.
I think sometimes, so the way I see it is like you have the sort of the dirty fuel that you start off with. So you might have had a tough upbringing, you might have something to prove, and they're using that anger to prove people wrong, and that gets them to a certain level of success. Where I see the next level of success, the true happiness comes from, is once they're doing something that they have a passion for, and then they start helping other people, and that's when it sort of becomes a clean fuel, and allows them to reach sort of that next level. So I think the sort of the dirty fuel gets you to a certain level and a certain level of happiness, and then that transition to actually there was no happy ever after. I hit my number, and I still feel the same way because it didn't fill the hole that I was trying to fill with this number. Actually, I'm going to start seeing if I can impact those around me, and that impacting of those around you can start to make a large difference.
So I think I like to help people a lot, but I also get taken advantage of. So my main thing is like I'm trying to safeguard myself while also giving back, which is something I'm working on.
So I would really think about helping other people, not as giving them money, but generally where I see guys get the happiest is when they mentor someone in the field that they had success in to help them have the same sort of success. So you find someone who reminds you of younger you. And then you help that guy reach the level of success that you have, or even better, surpass the level of success you have. And then you're invested in that journey. Unfortunately, as you say, if you just start giving people money, it rarely is used appropriately, and it's really helping people fulfill their own potential. With knowledge is typically much more fulfilling than filling their gap with just the money that they're missing.
So I think like a lot of the listeners that we're going to have on today, they're traders, probably degenerate gamblers, guys that sit at home all day, working hard, focused on either trading meme coins or whatever we're up to. If you got a guy like that subgroup or me, or a guy that parties a lot or whatever, like how would you kind of approach that? What advice would you give those guys?
Well, the first thing with all of those things is what's the pain that you're trying to get rid of. So what is it you're trying to hide? Because usually if there's some excessive behavior, be it gambling, partying excessively, spending excessively, usually it's trying to create a rush so that you can ignore the feelings that are coming up. So a lot of my work is, okay, what are the feelings when you're in silence? If you're just on your own, how does that make you feel inside? And usually there's an agitation or a pain or a discomfort. And then we say, okay, we're going to dig in to that discomfort and pain and try and get an understanding of where that's coming from. And typically there are self-worth issues that will show up some way or another through childhood, or different parts of your life where you're questioning yourself. And as we work through those issues, it becomes easier to let go of the bad habits, because the bad habits are just a temporary solution that cover up the discomfort in the moment. And we need to get rid of the discomfort rather than just say, hey, stop doing the habit, because otherwise they'll just find another habit to fill that gap rather than actually heal the wound that's causing the issue.
And do you think certain people have like a gambling issues? Like, is it from some issue at, during childhood, or where does it come from? Because like I'm much different than my dad, who won't bet $5 at the casino.
As I say, I think it's like a fine. It's having success at some stage where it's giving you the reward. So you remember that feeling, that dopamine. It's that the worst thing that can happen to a gambler is like the first time they go into a casino, they win a jackpot, because now they're going to chase that rush forever. So that's one piece of it. I think some people are just set up that way. I believe some people are born with a higher appetite for risk. I've got twin daughters, completely different personalities when it comes to risk. If we play poker with them, one of them's all in almost every hand, the other one hardly bets, just complete, and they've just been born that way. So I do think there's some innate level to it. I think people who end up entrepreneurs, a lot of the time they have this sort of innate drive to push the edges. So I think we're dealing with that as well, to some extent. And then it's that, as I say, digging in and understanding where the discomfort is coming from, and then working through that discomfort, so that it doesn't show in the same way.
Something that was very interesting for me working with Elliot was the first hypno session we did, where it's like going back to childhood. And, you know, I'll admit I was like very skeptical initially. I'm like, what are we talking about here? Like, I'm 35. Like, what are we doing today to figure out what we need to go now? Not, you know, Mayne from 30 years ago. But it's insane how pervasive some of these emotions are throughout your entire life, and how they can still manifest 3 decades later in your habits and the things that you do. Like, I had a bunch of brothers. I had jealousy issues because I had brothers, and not everything's fair. You know what I mean? One brother gets something, I don't get that. And that was like, oh, well, I was just a kid. Kids are jealous. They want stuff all the time. But I didn't realize that still affected me today in how I viewed my self-worth online. Some other guy made more money on a trade than I did. Some guy got an investment opportunity that I didn't. And subconsciously, that was still fucking with me, for lack of a better term. And I never would have made that connection on my own ever. I just thought that's how it was. It doesn't always go away. You know, I still have periods where I'll message Elliot. I'm like, oh, you know, today I feel a little more green than and envious than normal. But being aware of it, and then being like, okay, is this actually a real emotion that I'm feeling right now? Or is this something that, is this a little guy on my shoulder whispering in my ear that I've like taught to kind of shut up at this point and box out? And that was crazy for me. That was something I'd never, expected to gain from the sessions.
Yeah, I mean, my philosophy with it is everything's a program that's learned in childhood. So anytime there's an irrational behavior, there is actually a reason for it. And it's at some point it served a purpose for us. And what you're mentioning there, with the jealousy is, these emotions come up, and then you respond in a different way, and that might help you get your own way, or it might drive you forward. Like I said, with that dirty fuel, it gives you a reason to try and push harder.
Yeah.
But as you said, these are just programs from childhood. It was 5, 7, 10-year-old you that designed that program. And then until we interrupt those programs, they just keep running forever. And that's why we see these patterns with individuals, especially in moments of stress, where people show up as their childlike self. So they show up as the 5-year-old them in a situation, rather than showing up as the adult them in a situation. And you'll see that someone doesn't get their own way at the airport and they throw a tantrum. That's because throwing a tantrum when they were 6 actually worked with their parents, and now they're still following that same process of throwing tantrums in adulthood. As you say, we work through those issues. Those memories come up in the hypnotherapy session, and we reduce the emotions around them and adjust the feelings. It doesn't mean it goes away like a light switch, but what it does do is it turns down the dial. So if it was a 9 or a 10, we might get it down to a 3 or a 4, and then it's much more manageable and controllable. Whereas when it's a peak emotion and just the thinking mind is switched off, that's where we see the very bizarre behavior.
Yeah, I think it helps with just like being like the hypnotherapy. Obviously, like the first time I think you did it with me, it was pretty emotional for me, and I've had that chip on my shoulder, that anger issue from daddy issues or whatever. But the transition of that and understanding what I want and what I want to do moving forward is something that's really helped me, focused on being my best self. But like identifying why I feel dopamine, what dopamine is, certain things that you've discussed with me about why I'm seeking like these kind of negative rewards and going out and partying or hanging out with the wrong people. Being able to identify that and the reasons why I'm doing it from either my childhood or from whatever else really helps me do it less. And obviously it's not a road that just ends immediately once you identify these things. It takes time. But it helps you really think about, well, what if I do these things? What are my rewards? What am I going to get out of it? What am I giving up? Why am I doing it? And being able to talk to someone about that and identify those things helps you kind of, I guess, try to get there at least.
Well, I'd say it gives you another level of control. So, this nothing creates perfection. This isn't who we are as humans. But once you have an understanding, you have an awareness, you understand that this is a pattern that you're at risk from, then you can start taking more control of it. And, these things build a foundation. So, with trading, obviously, fewer mistakes mean a larger trading account, which means more profits in the good times. So everything is sort of building on that foundation, and anywhere we can save from a mistake, we can see these much larger profits 3 months from now, 6 months from now. It's exponential after a number of years if these mistakes aren't happening, or they're happening at much lower frequency.
I think on the crypto side too, especially because I'm sure a lot of these listeners are crypto guys, is one of the things about crypto is it expedites some of this stuff that someone who maybe is in another industry similarly, but they've built up their success and these calluses and these coping mechanisms over years. Some crypto guys, like he talks about 0 to 10,000, 10,000. Some people go there in a night. Like it's literally like a week. And now they went from living in their mom's basement. They hit a meme coin. Now they're a millionaire. And that alone is such a crazy thing to try and grapple with mentally, because it's so abnormal. It's happened so quickly. You've had no time to be like, okay, I now need to act like a millionaire because my life is now different. And you've made a life-changing sum of money. This is something that we always talk about on social media with regard to crypto. It's this life-changing money. How much money is enough to retire? And that was my thing.
Yeah.
Okay, 10 million, you're good. 5 million, whatever it is, I'll move to Thailand, and you only need 2 million in Thailand, whatever it is. But the thing is there's people in crypto who make that life-changing money in a week. It's not like, okay, this is the culmination of years and years of work and grinding up in poker tournaments, and now I'm in the big game. It's like maybe you even got lucky, and you've hit a jackpot. It's like winning the lottery. Now what? And I don't think a lot of people even consider the mental side of that, because oftentimes the things that you did to get there are going to be the very same things that can end up ruining you and sending you back to square one.
And also you have the situation of feeling that you deserve the success. So there's a huge amount of self-sabotage for people when they end up with a very large amount of money and they haven't necessarily had to work particularly hard for it. As you say, it can happen overnight in crypto. So instead of getting this gradual build over years of you working into the human who deserves to have that level of success and financial security, overnight everything has changed, and then there's a guilt, and it's like, hey, I should try and help my friends, I should invest in their companies, oh, I should buy my mom this, I should buy my dad this, oh, I'm supposed to be wearing X watch now because I have this amount of money. And they find a way of giving that money away quickly. And from the trading context, like you said, like the lucky meme coin purchase got them to that level. Sometimes they then fire into lots more coins thinking it's going to happen again, and they cost themselves a huge percentage of their profits just searching for the next big hit.
My biggest losses in trading almost all have come directly after my biggest wins. Like quite literally, like my best trading month ever, my best single trade ever. Almost always I've followed it up with just a stupid mistake, because you're feeling emotional. You're like, oh, I can't lose. You feel like a superhuman. And then I always show people in my streams the P&L. You want your P&L to just be this gradual curve, right? On a high enough time frame up and to the right. Yeah, there's going to be ups and downs, but the worst thing you can do is this stair stepping up. You're working so hard, you're doing all the right things, and then bang, you get back 2 months of good decision making with one bad decision. And that alone has repercussions mentally, where you start chasing and you do all of the shitty stuff. And I think that's something that people from this video hopefully understand. It's like you have to completely be able to kind of rewire your brain. Like, just because it's something worked once didn't mean it's going to work again. But yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, as you say, it's so normal for those big losses to come after the big wins. And that's where this work is so important. It's sort of be aware of how expensive this can suddenly be if you're not in control of your mind when things are going well.
And that's what's so crazy about the crypto market. Like we could be up hundreds of thousands every day for days and days and days and days. And we just think it's going to keep happening. And I know people in the meme world that went to 10 million and then lost 8 million in a week, or went to 50 million and then lost 42 of it in a couple of weeks. Like I know I'm friends with these people. It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
those
so,
are hard holes to dig yourself out of too. It's ideally you get a handle on these things before you do one of those, but sometimes it's that mistake that is the impetus to then go and seek. Okay, I can't let this happen again because it can be so costly. It can literally be life altering.
I would say it's very rare for people to reach out before there's been a mistake.
Yeah.
Usually the burn has to happen. Yeah, it's a bit like with the cycles. Like we all know how it goes. Like the first time you go through a crypto cycle, you don't usually hold on to a lot of it.
Yeah,
That's
I
just
gave it all back and more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're here telling you not to do it right now. So hopefully you learn. But
yeah.
most likely you weren't. We've all done it. Like in my first cycle, I lost it all on shit coins, and then learned my lesson, and then now I'm here. So sometimes maybe one person's smart enough to fade it all.
To do it.
I haven't met that person yet who's
Yeah,
made it off of one. Usually the first one is like the proving ground. You get your battle scars and then you kind of figure it out. But there's people like Elliot out there, guys, that exist who can help. It's not there's no short. It's like it expedites the journey a little bit. Like there's no way to avoid it. You have to learn these things. You have to make these mistakes. But they can help you maybe avoid some pitfalls along the way. And in this industry, those pitfalls can be hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in mistakes and future potential. And I mean, it's been unbelievably valuable to me, to say the least.
Yeah, I think like it's possible to not be one of us and fuck up no matter what first before you change. Like if you do the work and you really focus and like write the goals down and get with the right people and do the work, like and Elliot's not like Elliot's not going to solve all your problems just because you hire him. Like you got to do the work. Like you got to figure out what your goals are, what your issues are, what your negatives, what your leaks are, and then you got to map it out. And you gotta do it, and you're gonna. And if you're like me, you're gonna keep fucking up and fuck up less, and then hopefully you'll just fuck up less and less until you're done fucking up.
And I think that's a really important piece. Is again, humans aren't perfect. We're looking to reduce the number of mistakes that are made and reduce the impact of those mistakes. But it's always a problem whenever someone is like, "Hey, I need to be perfect from this point forward." It's a bit like if you're on a diet. Stay on your diet. And then there'll probably be a mistake at some point. And then instead of saying, hey, I've screwed up, I'm off my diet now, you say, okay, I lasted 4 weeks. I'm going to see if I can last 5 weeks now. And you get back to the diet the next day. And I think there's this push towards perfection can sometimes cause some of the issues. And we've got to accept we're humans. We need to have grace for ourselves. But this constant effort into understanding ourselves, understanding our weaknesses, and then over time reducing those mistakes and moving into a higher version of ourselves and our potential.
There's
go ahead.
Sorry, go for it, Eric.
It's a good point. Like for me, like if I fuck up, like the next day I wake up, I don't say, okay, I fucked up. Now I can just fuck up forever. Like I go, okay, like how, like today's a new day. I believe that I can fix my issues. I believe that I can stop doing these things and I can focus and get a workout in, go do recovery, all the other stuff. And even if I wake up late, like one of the things I like to say is like, okay, how do I salvage the day? I can salvage the day and get as much done as I can get done. And before the day is over, maybe I've got everything I need to get done. And that's like some of the things that help me at least. But go ahead, man.
Yeah, I mean, for me, is very much being process oriented, like having certain things that I needed to do every single day and every single week to just feel like I was moving towards this goal. Because I've worked for myself for so long now, I've lost a lot of structure in my life. I don't go to an office. I work from home. It's very easy. Crypto guys, you guys know this. Like, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to stay up late tonight doing this. And then whatever, tomorrow's Monday, I'm going to sleep till noon. Like I had ebbs and flows where I was like dialed in. And then I had months where I would be like trading health for wealth essentially. And yeah, maybe I made some money, but I ate like shit. I felt like shit. I wasn't sleeping. And just having these kind of frameworks, just not even mentally, literally like a checklist of like, I know if I did all of these things this week, even if I didn't make any money, like I didn't take any trades, it's a good week. And to your point around like, you make a mistake, like I'm not every single day, I'm not doing everything I need to do. But at least I can measure it now, and it's trackable. And I know over time, if I do these things more often than not, it is going to build to who I want to be. If there's 52 weeks a year and I do this 45 of them, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's that progression, as you say. It's this understanding, hey, instead of looking at the results, we want to look at that process. So am I following my process week after week? How closely am I getting to my process? And what does this mean for me over time?
I think one of the things you asked me to, Elliot, like you identify like what you want out of life too. Like you might, as a third party, be like, okay, like you're a trader, you have a dog, you walk them. Like, what else do you want out of life? Like, what you want to have a kid? You want to travel the world? You want this? You want that? And I think it's important that if you're kind of like you've kind of made some money in crypto, you're figuring out what you want to do. Like, also try to figure out, write down and map out like who do you want to be, who do you want to become, how are you going to get there?
And I think, yeah, the sort of looking at your values. So what are my values as a human? When I always like the sort of when you're 70 years old and you're looking back, what are you going to be glad that you did? There are things we can do in our 20s, our 30s, and 40s that we just don't have the option to do in our 70s. Those situations disappear. And certainly at some stage, more money is unlikely to be the thing that you're happy you did.
Yeah, I think it was definitely you being like, no one, I don't think anyone's on their deathbed saying, hey, I wish I made that extra few $1,000s by, missing my kid's baseball game. You know what I mean? And it's so true. And, I'm old for crypto world, not as old as Eric. Eric's very old. Eric's ancient. He might die after this call.
I have hair,
but in crypto world, I'm 35. Like I'm unk in the crypto. Some of these guys are 20, 22, and you're making these. I'm almost glad that I had a bit more of my 20s before I started even becoming aware of this. But the sooner you guys start at least thinking like this, I'm not saying you need to hire a performance coach tomorrow. But the sooner you're more aware, I think the easier. It's easier to build these processes and these good habits earlier. I wish I was doing some of the stuff I'm doing now, not even about the trading, about like just planning my life, being intentional with what I do every day, going to the gym, having good habits. The sooner you start, the better. It's going to just pay dividends because then you have that time to compound just that many more years.
Yeah, and as you say, it's compounding. This is everything that we can change in our 20s makes our 30s easier, and everything we can change in our 30s makes our 40s easier.
Yeah, and you're getting perspectives. Like I'm 43 years old. I'm really old. I know. And
I'm 44. I got you by a year.
Yeah, so we're getting all these different perspectives. Like Mayne's in a different part of life than I am, but at some point you have these existential moments where you're like, okay, why am I here? What are we doing here? I think regardless of how much money you have, but for anyone that's listening in their 20s or 30s, I would say don't waste time. You're here once and you're committing to doing something as a profession or whatever, like, commit to it or don't, like, and figure out what you're passionate about and do it. Because you don't want to be sitting my age and because you're going to feel like you ran out of some time here,
Yeah. I mean, it's, as you say, aging hits all of us. And as you say, you hit those existential moments where it's like, hey, what am I really doing with my life? Is this the way I want to continue to live? And, how can I make these next 10 years, 20 years look different?
What do you think about, like, what advice do you have for like a crypto guy or someone that's in like a high sensation, business like we are in, a kind of gambling environment? What advice have you given to other poker players or traders, to kind of manage that or?
So one is treat it as if it's a business. So I like to say to guys, if you're a crypto trader, a lot of the time you're working for yourself. I like to have guys imagine that they're working for a Wall Street firm, because I work for the Wall Street firm guys as well. And, they can't just decide to not follow the process and break the rules they have on bankroll management. Like, it's just not something they can do because they'll lose their job. And it's important that if you're trading for yourself, you view that in the same way, that you don't deserve to be trading for yourself if you don't follow the process, because it It's just not something that's going to work long term. Another one is try and create the space and the breaks for your mind away from whatever profession, whether it's gambling, whether it's the trading. So meditation, go for walks in the wood, calm your system down, and really invest in those sorts of things. So massage, meditation. I use the sauna and the cold plunge a lot to
Mhm.
reset, and it's having these resets in all of the time, so that you're just not on the roller coaster 24/7. I've seen obsession in crypto markets. I've known of people who have an alarm go off every hour of the night so they could check Bitcoin prices.
I've been
You
there.
cannot sustain that for the long term. You need to be stepping off the roller coaster, and that's something that you've just got to be really aware of if you're playing this game.
Yeah, crypto is so difficult for that, guys, because it doesn't close. Like you will always feel like you're missing something. And guess what? You are. Like you
Yeah.
will never catch every single move. There's always going to be a coin that you're not in that goes up or goes up more than the one that you're in. And that was something that was very hard for me to come to grips with, was like, I'm not going to, you can't be everywhere all the time, all at once. You can't. And it's almost like cathartic, like just like okay, I know what I can do and what I have to do, and if I do that, I'm happy. uh because if you live this life of like chasing the number, chasing the biggest gainer of the day, and crypto incentivizes it no different than a casino does, right? What was the biggest mover today? Oh, everyone's talking about on Twitter on this one coin and you're not in it. Ha ha ha. Here's FOMO. Look, this guy won a jackpot over there. Like it's incessant. And so if you don't have these things in place, like Elliot's mentioning, to like reset, to step away, like you'll go nuts. And it's unbelievably unhealthy. And take this from someone who quite literally had a Sonos speaker next to my bed, and all of my price alerts, didn't matter the hour, like blaring in my ear. Yeah, and then if one of you, once you guys eventually get girlfriends, which will happen one day, I'm sure, once you start talking to women, they're not going to fly for that either. They don't want to be woken up at 3 a.m. because you got to go see what's going on in the middle of the night in some random Sunday in August.
And then also your thought process gets worse and worse as your sleep gets worse. So, as well as like, hey, these alerts are going off, they're upsetting everybody. You're going to start trading with more emotion, with less of a thought process, and put yourself in these higher risk situations over and over again.
Well, I mentioned my biggest losses coming after my biggest wins. Generally, my biggest wins, at least, prior, were after these periods of very unhealthy trading habits where I was obsessing over the charts. I felt like this is the time to make money. If I'm not locked in 18 hours a day right now, I'm never going to make money again. And I'm now eating like shit, diets like shit. I haven't been sleeping. And then I'm not at my full mental capacity to
Mhm.
make good decisions. Something I did, this was before I even started working with Elliot, but I stopped trading on my phone completely because there were so many instances where I'd wake up and I'm like, oh, and I'd make a decision, and then I would come to my desk later, and that was not a good decision. I was not with it. You can only imagine if you're sleeping 4 hours a night, like you're not operating. You might be awake and crushing Red Bulls, but you're not like operating at the highest, ability of your mind as much as you might think you are. And you'd be surprised how really you could make some serious mistakes because you're not locked in.
And I mean, I see that in online poker as well. When you see the guys who, normally they're playing on their PC, they've got everything
Yeah.
set up, they've got multiple screens, and then some evenings they'll decide to try and play on their mobile phone, and they just get crushed. And everything's the same. You need to be treating it like a professional to be in the top 1% of anything, and ideally we want to be in the top 0.1% when we're in games of these sorts of stakes. And anything like that takes away some of your edge, and we've got to be going for all of the edge we can in every possible moment.
No, it's so true. Trader Harrow says, any advice for someone who's made it in the past cycle and gave everything back, and you're now back to stage one? Well, you're still here, buddy. That's that I think is one of the biggest things. A lot of people who make a bunch of money and then lose it all in crypto, they leave, they
Mhm.
give up. So if you're still here and showing up, I think that's the first step towards doing what you want to do. What I did when I kind of first made some money and lost it all, I tried to remember what I did to make that money, right? Because clearly you were doing something right to make that money. And to Elliot's point, it's not necessarily about having no mistakes. It's okay, I did these things right, but then I did all these things wrong. Okay, what can I do to reduce these things I did wrong? And that's going to be a huge help kind of in your second go round here, I think.
Yeah, my advice is like, everyone says, hey, I missed this opportunity. I missed this opportunity. There's always another opportunity. There's always another opportunity where you can make a fuckload of money. And almost like for me, I don't trade that much. I made like I usually never trade. I made 2 or 3 trades this year that I think like I was almost forced to make them. It was so obvious. So it's like, if you're patient enough and you have the liquidity to do it, then you can do it that way. If not, and you don't have a ton of liquidity, what I did when I didn't have a lot of liquidity when I was a kid, I'd have a 9-to-5 job and I'd make money, and I'd have a bunch of other side hustles. And then eventually my side hustle became my main hustle, and I started making a lot more money. So I think like, just don't lose your shit, be humble, and just grind.
You need money to play the game, right? So never put yourself in a position where you can blow up, right? You never want to have the risk of ruin be a real thing. Like, as much as I've eaten shit in crypto many times, one of the things that I got better at as I was in this longer was never letting a loss become more than I could stomach, right? Like, yeah, there are losses that are disgusting, but like where I'm out of the game, you're still in the game from the sounds of it. So that's the best first thing. And to Eric's point, I didn't quit to go full-time trading until I had enough bankroll to actually make a living doing it. I think that's something a lot of people do wrong, is they try and go all in. And another thing to Eric's point is there's always opportunity. Every bull run I've been a part of, people told me this was the last one. This is the last meme coin. This is the last bull run. Bitcoin's over. They've been telling me that since Bitcoin was $1,000. Now it's 100,000. So the fact that you're here, you're in the game, you're still around, I think that you should be excited and realize that there's much more to come.
And don't ever give up. Like, don't ever kill yourself, I think is the meme. But like,
that's the crypto meme. Yeah, never kill yourself.
I mean, I know that so many people that have been like completely fucked. I was like in a pretty bad spot a year and a half ago, not financially, just like having a bad time with girls or whatever. But some of the best things that happen are after your lowest point. And if you're at a situation where you failed, think about, when I fail at anything, I think about solutions. How do I get better? How do I fix this? And that's the mentality you should always have. You should never dwell, never sit around and bitch about it. Your mindset should always be, how do I fix this? How do I make it better? And as long as you're breathing, you got a shot,
And it's pushing through to the other side, like you said. It's having that determination that it's going to get better if you keep moving forward. And it can be crushing if someone loses their trading account, but there is a way of coming back. And as you said, working in the background, making sure you've got enough shots to fire, and then taking those good opportunities rather than desperation shots, trying to hit the massive multiplier.
But let's talk about that for a quick second, because like I know people that I feel like they're addicted to blowing up their trading account.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for the people like that seem that they can make millions of dollars and lose them just as fast, almost like they want to?
I think it's a self-worth issue. So I think a lot of guys, they really struggle with having success and having large amounts of money. It feels very uncomfortable to them. Something that I notice in different industries is people ending up around a certain number and bringing themselves back to that number over and over again. For some guys, it's 20 grand. For some, it's 100,000. For some, it's 1 million. For some, it's 5 million. But what they'll find is they'll get to this comfort zone, and then if they go above it, they gamble away. But if they go below it, they can usually bring themselves back to that number. And usually it's about some idea of what value they believe they have as a person and what they deserve to have. Another thing is their comfort zone being when their back is against the wall. So they feel that when their back's against the wall, when things are stressful, that's when they perform at their best. So they keep bringing themselves back to this high stress situation, because that's where they feel they're in their zone. That's when they're most in flow, most present. So you see these guys, they build an account, they crush it on purpose, like subconsciously, they don't consciously know they're doing it, but then they're actually quite comfortable again when they're back in the fight.
Yeah.
And then they build it up again, and then a part of them misses that fight, and they bring themselves back. It's because that's how they view themselves. That's their
So
identity.
what I think Ponzi Trader does, he's one of the guys that's on Liquidated from time to time, but he kind of resets his trading account. So when he makes a big lick, he'll put it to cold storage or whatever, and then reset the account because he seems to be doing better that way instead of having a big amount in the account and then he blows it up. And I have the same situation with my bank account. When my bank account hits a certain number, I start feeling comfortable. Okay, like, like
find a way to melt it.
How can I spend 40 grand this weekend? You're like,
yeah.
Like, what do you recommend for a guy like me where I don't think I necessarily feel like I don't deserve it. I feel like I deserve it. I want to spend it instead of spending it. Like,
well, I mean, so it's
how do I train myself not to do that?
So I would say it's seeing it as a deserve for that number to be higher.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there might be a part of you that doesn't want to see it double, because what does it mean if it doubles?
Yeah.
And you're finding a really good way of not allowing it to ever reach those higher numbers, because, you know, as we said, this is something that compounds. So if every time you reach a certain level, you take a big chunk out because, hey, I deserve to take a chunk out now, it's going to stop it compounding in the same fashion.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, you got any other questions?
No, I mean, listen, I'll use this opportunity to give a big shout out to Elliot. Like I said, I've been working with Elliot since December. I was at a pretty low point mentally, just as you guys know who are in crypto, you go through periods of burnout, right? Like this was coming to it was the end of the Trump trade. So Bitcoin basically had doubled over a couple months span, and I was trading like an absolute demon, which had some upside and some downside as well. I was not sleeping good. I was in a very bad place mentally, but I was making money. And on top of all of this, I was running my business, right? And it kind of culminated with me not doing what I needed to be doing in my business, in my life, and all the other things I had going on. And a bunch of that money I had made, I gave back, you know, a huge portion of it kind of at the very end. And it just kind of was like a low point where I was like, okay, this is not sustainable. And since then, Elliot has helped me really, really get on track, where I feel like I'm operating at a level I haven't operated on ever before, honestly. I've never had as much going on in my life as I do at this very moment. And I've never felt as well prepared to manage all of those things. Obviously, there's days that are hectic and I'm sending Elliot a voice note and I sound manic and he's like, are you good? Like, what's going on? Like, do you need to call me right now? And then there's days where it's like, hey man, everything is like smooth sailing, like we're crushing. And I attribute a lot of this to Elliot's help. And then, you know, I'm proud of myself for actually executing on these things. And so I think if you're in crypto, obviously this is there's all sorts of levels. I know Elliot has a company where it's like, you know, you can work with Elliot. You can also work with people on his team, depending on, you know, your bankroll, your size, where you are. So there's something for everyone. I genuinely believe that. And if you're at a point in your journey, I'm not saying if you're just getting started trading, you need to be working with Elliot. But if you're at a point now where you're like, hey, I got a lot of money now. Like this is a significant amount of money. I don't want to fuck this up, you know, or you know that you have leaks in your game, because I knew I was doing things wrong. It didn't mean I was unaware, but sometimes you need that person. But if you feel like you're at that level now where you're like, how can I just improve, refine that edge, make that knife sharper, operate at a higher level? You know, I couldn't recommend Elliot more highly.
Man, thank you so much. And it's been so fun watching that progress. It's really enjoyable from the outside to watch.
Yeah, I agree. Elliot's been wonderful for me as well. And for the people that can't afford a life coach or anything like that, I just think really I try to identify and write down the things that you're really working on getting towards and how to refine your business or your practice or your trading or whatever else. And, you know, be careful with your ego. One of the biggest things we talk about all the day is ego and trading. You can feel like you're a god and you're the best trader in the world, the best investor in the world. All the worst decisions I ever fucking made in my life were from having a big ego. All the bad decisions I've ever made or anything else. So if you can reset your mind, if you start really feeling yourself or whatever.
It's those ebbs and flows, right? Like where you have the highest high, like trading specifically and gambling, you have the highest of highs where you're like, I am a god. I just made so much money. I just made someone's salary in a day. and you think you can't do no wrong. And then you have the lowest lows where you quite literally are like, what am I doing with my life? I've wasted years trying to chase this thing. And those exist. That's something that Ella told me with a lot. Like, you can't get rid of this. That's life. It's about reducing the amplitude. Just bring you a little bit more center. Like, here's baseline. Okay, the highs, you can still be happy. It's not like you're not allowed to be happy, but you're not so happy that you're going to Eric's point, make a stupid decision out of euphoria. And that the lows where, hey, I'm disappointed in myself, that's normal, but it's not so low that you're questioning, your existence. It's about just kind of smoothing the edges, bringing things a little bit more to the center. And I know many of you listening who are in this trading space, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You hit that big trade and then you do something stupid. And you do something stupid. You do something stupid. And as you scale, those mistakes become very expensive. So better to get a hold of them now.
Well, thanks for coming on, Elliot. We'll beat all your information on the pod, and yeah, you've been a great help to me too. So thank you, brother.
Guys, really appreciate it. And yeah, hope it was useful for all the guys watching. And if you have any questions, always feel free to hit me up on Twitter or anywhere else.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay. Cheers, guys.